we were saying that the Mishnah of Sotah deals with someone who's jealous of his wife. And the Hebrew for jealous comes from the root kuf nun aleph, kine. And the Mishnah, when it uses the word, this root, kine, kuf nun aleph, also uses it to mean a warning. And we've said, and this is the beginning of the Mishnah, that the situation of the Sotah is that of someone whose husband has this suspicion that she's involved with another man. He warns her not to be secluded with him. If she is secluded with him, he has the right to take her to Jerusalem and to force her through the test of the bitter waters. And we'll see what this test is in a few more Mishnayot. But the Mishnah begins to ask, well, okay, how does this warning work? And it begins, Ketzad Mekanela. How does he warn her? And again, the Mishnah is using the root Kuf Nun Aleph for jealousy, to signify warning. Ketzad Mekanela. How does he jealous her, or how does he warn her? This theme of jealousy runs right the way through the Mishnah. We've said that in other contexts it applies to zealotry. Maybe there is an implication of violence actually in the root kuf nun aleph in kine. You know, zealots are violent. Pinchas was someone who kine, who was zealous, who slew Cosby and Zimri. So there's some rage, there's some anger here. There's some anger here which is violent. And as we said yesterday, perhaps we're dissipating it by subjecting it to a legal process, which is going to kind of rationalize and smooth it out. Let's carry on in the Mishnah. Keitzad Makanela, how does he warn her? Amar la bifnei shnaim, he said to her in front of two, Al tedabri im ish ploni, don't speak with a certain man. Al tedabri im ish ploni, don't speak to that chap. Vedibra imo, and she spoke to him. So she speaks to him. Is that a good warning? This is actually not a warning at all, the Mishnah rules. The husband can't just tell his wife not to speak with another man, or at least if he does, this is not a reason to impose the Sotah ritual on her. So the Mishnah continues. You know, he warns her not to speak. She speaks. Adain hi muteret leveita umuteret lechol bat truma. She's still permitted to veita, to her house. Really interesting. Her husband is described here as her house. She's still permitted to her husband. Muteret leveita, or permitted to her house. She's permitted to husband, and if she's married to a kohen, umuteret lechol bat truma, she's permitted to eat truma. In other words, just telling your wife, even in front of witnesses, not to speak to someone is not a valid warning for the purpose of the Sotah ritual. So what is a valid warning? Well, the Rambam explains, and the Gemara, based on the Gemara explains that he has to warn her in front of witnesses not to be secluded with a certain person, not to be secluded. And this language is missing from the Mishnah. But we can just imagine he said, don't be secluded with a certain person. And then now let's pick up the Mishnah. Let's pick up the Mishnah again. Nichnasa imo leveit haseter. She then entered some private place with him. Veshahata imo kadei tuma. And she stayed with him sufficient time for her to be defiled. So it sounds like he's told her, well, okay, don't be alone with this guy. And she is alone with him in a private place for enough time for a sexual act to take place. And this, of course, has to be in front of witnesses. We learned in the first Mishnah that both the warning and the seclusion need to be in front of witnesses. And at this point, the Mishnah rules asura leveita asura lechol bat truma. At this point, she's then forbidden to her husband. Again, her husband is referred to as her house, leveita. She's forbidden to her husband, and if she's married to a kohen, she's forbidden to eat truma. Effectively, we're saying that at this point, she's now, if you like, the marriage is suspiciously in doubt unless it's going to be repaired by the ritual of the bitter waters. At this point, she's not considered married. Now, she's not considered divorced yet. We haven't had a divorce, but she's in this in-between stage. She's still married to her husband, but she's forbidden to him and she's forbidden to any other man until she's completed the ritual of the bitter waters, which we'll find out about in later Mishnayot. If he dies, maybe he dies the next day before we have time to do the bitter waters. If he dies, then she performs chalitza, but not yibum. And again, we're sensing here something about the anger, something about the schism, the fracture in this family, that normally if he died childless, then she would automatically be married, or at least have the option of being married if she didn't refuse, to his brother, in order to bear children in her dead husband's name. And the Gemara doesn't really explain why this is not possible, but the Mishnah is making it clear that it's not possible. Somehow, once she's in this state, the relationship with her husband has ended. Even if he dies, I mean, she will inherit from him, but she will not build up his house. Of course, al pi halacha, al pi din, according to the letter of the law, she's still attached to the brother-in-law. So how are we going to arrange that she doesn't marry the brother-in-law? Well, the Mishnah rules choletzet velo mit yabemet. She gives the brother-in-law chalitza rather than marrying him. The relationship is broken at an emotional level, and the halacha will then make arrangements to ensure that she never actually has to go through with this marriage to her dead husband's brother.